Awesome. Hi, everyone.
Afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming along or staying in your seats, as I think most of you have done. I was trying to work out whether or not this is the drunk crowd or the crowd that is teetotal.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes as we go along. So by way of introduction, I'm Mark from Experian, and
Yeah, I'm Bex. I'm also from Experian.
cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend the next 15 minutes just giving you a bit of experience and a bit of an insight into how different brands are facing today's challenges. Now, I hope you've seen how this event is branded because it's all about Riders of the Storm. So what we're going to do is we're going to focus on three. If we get the slides to work.
So is the tech clicker end of day
Yes.
mayhem?
So the first storm is how to get the slides to work. But there we go. So we're going to focus on three things, three challenges that I would imagine is going to resonate with everybody through today. So the cost of living crisis, the post-pandemic insight gap, as I'm going to refer to it, and also digital disruption. Now, we should really have had a fourth item on here, which was the queues at MadFest and how to get into the event, but we didn't have enough foresight to add that onto the slide. So before we get started, and as all the way through this presentation, we're going to have a little challenge for you, and we're going to put up an image, and we want you to try and guess what the image is. Give you a clue. It's related to the topic of the first storm, which is the post-pandemic behavioural change. So think about what people did in the pandemic, and we've got a goodie bag for you if you're right with the first answer. So we're going to need you to shout out what you think this image is.
Yeah, feel free to stand up and shout out if you want to.
Anyone? Any thoughts? Ooh, lots of frowns. Frowns. What did everybody do in the pandemic? It's a pet. Yes,
well done.
Excellent. It is a dog indeed. So through the pandemic, and obviously we're hopefully through it, but what we saw through the pandemic was people changing their behaviours. Probably most of us have been working at home either a little bit or quite a bit during the pandemic. And for us as brands or as agencies and as marketers, the challenge for us is that people are not in the places where they previously were. So if you set up your advertising to assume that people were in a particular location, well, the reality is that's just not true anymore. People are in different places. And also their behaviors have changed, where they're buying, what they're buying, and also, as I say, things like pet ownership went through the roof during the pandemic. So lots of change. To bring this to life, we're going to talk through some examples. I'm going to hand across to Bex to talk a little bit about what's going on in the automotive industry.
Yeah, awesome. So I manage the automotive vertical for Experian Marketing Services, and what we've noticed, particularly relative to cost of living crisis and the pandemic and the way that this has impacted a purchase such as a luxury item, which is a car, is that people have been doing a lot more due diligence into that purchase, as well as businesses like the manufacturers creating e-commerce platforms, people configuring their vehicle, also people, the way that they actually are looking after their vehicle as well. So, people are waiting a lot longer to service their cars, and then you've also got things like, the disruptors, so the Kazoos and the Cinches of the world, where you buy a car online and it's delivered to your door and you've got this money-back guarantee. So that industry, along with the whole spectrum of other industries, has significantly changed. And what has been so important and paramount to brands like automotive brands is that they have been able to be ahead of the curve and speak to their customers and capture those audiences and build loyalty and retention, but also have these innovative ways of keeping up with the industry. I mean, I've never seen the automotive industry act so reactively like ever before. They're behaving very much like retail brands, actually. So that's just one insight for one industry. So yeah, I'll hand back to Mark.
Yeah, so another example, this is Tails.com, and Tails are selling primarily pet foods. And what they realized after the pandemic was that they had a little bit of an insight gap. They didn't understand their customers as well as they'd like. And most importantly, the insight that they did have, they weren't able to actually activate it and make impact through that insight. So what they did was that they used their first-party data, so data that they knew about their prior purchases, combined that with third-party data to create a new segmentation of the marketplace and of their clients, so that they could then activate on that and reach new audiences through digital channels. So it's a basic use of insight, segmenting the marketplace and then applying that into digital. Another example here is SES, right? So SES is a retail outlet, and as a result of the pandemic, and what I was talking about, people basically living in and working in different places, was that they found that they needed to reevaluate where their customers were and reevaluate their store locations and what promotions and marketing activity they were doing. So in their case, what was really important, it's all about location. So what they did was they used mobility data, footfall data, combined that with their own, again, first-party data, together with third-party data to create a new profile of their customer base, and then map that against the locations where their stores were, and pull together a list of potential places where they could perhaps expand. And as a result, they opened up 2 new stores to capture a new set of demographics, a new set of customers that post the pandemic they were able to reach and attract into their business. And then finally, under this whole theme of the pandemic, then we talk about EasyJet holidays. So this is a situation where we all know that during the pandemic, our holiday behaviors changed, and there's been a lag of that. That has carried on, and people are taking a different approach to their holidays than they were previously. So what EasyJet have done is again, combining different types of data. What was interesting with them is they've got a lot of data about where you're flying from, where you're flying to. They've got a lot of data like that. But what they don't have is the background on those individuals, who they are, their families, but also attitude. So pulling together market research data, overlaying it on top of the analysis that was carried out to create a brand new set of insight to understand consumers. So the recurring theme through all of this is that the pandemic is just one example of where you get change in our marketplace. It's a really big change, but it is a change nonetheless. And who you were marketing to a year ago, or 2 years ago, or 3 years ago, should not necessarily inform who you're marketing to and who you're selling to now. So it's really important to re-establish your benchmark and your insights, understand who your customers are, what they're going to be doing, and apply that to your business moving forward. So we're going to move on to the next storm now, which is all about the economy and the cost of living. And Bex, maybe you want to take on this one.
Yeah, green button.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. So another game, another Guess Who. Try and guess this image. Shout out, stand up if you have any idea. It is relative to the cost of living and the rise in goods and products. Anyone hazard a guess?
Trolley.
Genius. Yeah. Give this lady a goodie bag, please. Thank you. Well done. Yeah. And actually, very relative is that it is an empty trolley. So 2 parts to this, as we've all experienced from the pandemic and then moving to the cost of living, and not only in the UK, but obviously across the globe, but we're going to talk about the UK specific as this example. So actually, on average, disposable income has reduced by 19% across the UK. And you can't judge all of your customers the same because back to what Mark was saying is everybody's different. As in brands and marketeers, how do you understand these people and ride that storm with them and understand and talk to them with personalisation and relevance? And actually on the contrary to that, 21 million are now classed as mass affluence. That's actually risen from 11 million since 2012. So you'd think, right, okay, well, has that had this impact? Yes, the majority is negative, but there is also, serious diversions in that as well. So, this is going back to, talking and understanding who your customers are. And the two pillars that have affected this the most is obviously the inflation in energy and costs of products, but then also the mortgage interest increase most recently as well. And just to show you here, this points to why you can't speak to all people the same. So these are the three top groups, as you can see on this screen, who have been most affected by the inflation in energy prices, products, and actually, people with less than £2,000 discretionary income are all in the pale areas here. And it's really talking to them and giving them a hug. We found with a lot of brands that really getting that insight and granular, information has really helped brands speak to their customers with even more relevance. As back to what I was saying earlier about, car manufacturers looking at lease models and subscription models. Brands are really pivoting how they're working and how they're talking to customers now more than ever to accommodate them and show that they really understand who they are and who their target audiences are. And it's safeguarding your brand as well, your brand and your agency, so that people will still buy your product. People aren't spending money on, certain products like cars, for example, because the discretionary income has reduced. And then others, they are still able to buy those products because, their discretionary income hasn't been so affected. And their priorities change, and it's understanding who those people are. So in this slide, as you can see here, these are the three groups who've been most affected by the mortgage interest inflation. So as you can see, completely different groups of people. What kind of household composition are they? How many children do they have? Where are they in their life journey? And you as marketeers and agencies, talking to these people, it's understanding their lifestyle and what their key motivations are. And as you can see as well, the change in the heat map, the south has been very much affected. I live in London myself, and thank goodness I actually secured a rate before it went ridiculous, but I've had some friends that were, in tears really. So yeah. So another client story for you. So a gym membership, it isn't an essential purchase. This is something that is a luxury to have. So we work with a prestige gym brand, and what they did is they were looking through their first-party data, through their CRM, to understand who would be most affected by the economic crisis, and how do they talk to them? Can they help them out? Is there another way of using a subscription model to retain those customers and help them out and keep that brand loyalty there and keep them coming to their gyms, basically. And then, another quick example as well is we work with a major pub network, and this was more around mobility data and understanding, through the cost of living, it's been really interesting. A lot more people are actually drinking at home, funnily enough. They weren't going to pubs so much. It's cheaper. People's lifestyles have completely changed, and certain behaviours have been accelerated massively and actually not returned back to what they were. So we're working with this pub brand to understand who would be going and visiting their pubs. This is looking at their marketing strategy across the board so that they could create campaigns and messaging to bring people into their pubs, offers, a pint with a meal, for example. We all know about the £1 pork pie during the pandemic and going to get quite drunk. So yeah, it's all about speaking with that personalisation and relevance and riding the storm with your customers and your clients. So you would be absolutely mad not to utilise first and third party data to really understand your customers and speak to them in this way. And I'll hand back to Mark.
Cool. So did you say we're just about time? 2 minutes. Okay, right. Cool. So just to wrap up fairly quickly, shout out very quickly on this last image, close-up of a...
Oh, good guess though. I like that guess, actually, very relevant.
Right, we'll zoom on. None of you got that one, even though probably half of you have got one in your pocket. So very briefly, just want to touch on digital disruption. Now, we've been talking about digital disruption for a long time, so maybe it's less a storm and more just ongoing inclement weather, probably the best way to think about it. Two aspects to digital disruption, a challenge and an opportunity. So first of all, the opportunity. So digital disruption allows fintechs, startups, organizations to break into established markets and to do, really disrupt those marketplaces and to grow and to benefit from that. So how do you use insight in that environment? Well, the big challenge in that environment is that you're a startup, you don't actually have a lot of data. You don't have a lot of customers, you don't have a lot of first-party data. How do you use data to drive your marketing activity? So we worked with Tandem Bank when they first started, and what we did was we actually used market data, the whole of the UK data, to create a segment that they could target, and then we fed that into their social and their digital channels. And what they saw was a 20% reduction in cost of acquisition for customer acquisition costs. It was a huge benefit, even though they didn't have any first-party data. But maybe you're an established brand and you just want to make more out of digital. Now, if you're like me and you've gone to some of these sessions today, tremendous opportunities in different technologies, different channels, but actually what planning are you doing and what data are you using to get the most out of those environments? Well, one of the challenges that people face is around regulatory constraints and the availability of personal level data. If that's a problem for you, then a fantastic way forward is to use geo-level data. If you can use geo-level data, you get a significant amount of the benefit of insight without the challenge of personal level data in that channel. So we work, for example, with Finecast, and Finecast use our data on a global basis to carry out geo-targeting for their addressable TV solution. So appreciate pretty much up at time. The summary of all of this, if there's one takeaway, it's you can use insight to address a whole raft of different challenges, and lots of brands are doing it in different ways today and getting benefit from the use, not only for CRM, but for advertising and for cross-channel and omni-channel activities. So our conclusion really is that if you're not using third-party data in your activities, then it's a little bit like a lighthouse without a light bulb. It's madness, really. So please do come and speak to any of us. Thank you very much for your time today and listening to us in a hot tent. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.